Hello, welcome to Carving Music. My name is Tom Jocks. I'm a violin maker and a musician, and I promised you a lathe video, and here we are. So I have cleared off my bench, more or less. I have some clamps and a ruler, but besides that, it's pretty clear. This is where we're going to put the lathe. If you know anything about lathes, you know that usually they're really big and heavy and take up half a room. At least, I mean, those are the kind of lathes that I've always seen. I have some friends that have lathes, and they're not small things, even when they have the MIDI lathes, as they call them. And then you get into the really nice lathes that are, you know, giant. They weigh tons. Well, this lathe is going to be different. Uh, so I have it in a bag. This is my lathe right here. And I know that because on the bag I have a tag, and the tag says lathe. So that means there's a lathe inside. So I open up the bag. I'm very proud that I found a bag that fit the lathe almost perfectly. So let's see. In the bag I have instructions, of course. Always keep the instructions with your lathe. Here I have some turning tools. Helps to keep the turning tools with the lathe. After all, I only use those tools when I'm using the lathe. So if it fits in the bag, why not? And then I have the lathe itself. So this is a little tricky to get out. Far from impossible, but tricky. Because it's on a little board. And it's lopsided because it has an engine on one side. A little motor. There we are. And there are a few other tools in here, but I think everything I need is there. We'll find out in a minute. So here we are. So this is it. This is a TAG mini lathe. I have the woodworking set up on it. They also make a metalworking version. I did not get that kind, and I am now slightly regretting it. I should have gotten both, because the difference is really just the pieces that attach to the bed. All right, so then I have electric motor, and I have attached to the motor a pedal, so I can adjust the speed, the power that gets to the motor. So anyway, there it is. It's nothing too fancy. It's just convenient for me because the largest things that I am ever going to turn for violin making are pegs and the end buttons for cellos. So what are we going to make the end button out of? Well, I was just working on that. Here I have a piece of ipe. This is actually some decking. Well, it's intended for decking, but it's very durable. It does splinter a little bit, but only if you leave edges. And of course, we're making something round, so there's going to be no edges. This is what I made the end button for my cello with, and at first I wasn't convinced it would be any good, and it's been great. So instead of using a piece of valuable ebony, we'll use ipe. It's going to be resting on the ground whenever you put the cello down. It's going to have that constant pull of the tail gut. So there we are. Now what I've already done is I've already poked a hole in either side, in pretty close to the center. And on one side I've marked and cut an X. And that is because at this end of the lathe there's a point with 4 small knives that will dig into that. On the other side I just simply have a point. So but before we get on to the actual lathing, I'm going to show you what I do, because I don't really like starting with a square, because all these edges, especially on Ipe, they will tear out. And I want to have as little tear out as possible for two reasons. One, it might tear out more than I intend or want. And two, if it tears out and it sort of splinters everywhere, I will be wearing glasses, safety goggles, but still, you don't want too many things flying in the air if you can help it. The things you want flying in the air, you want it to be nice, smooth shavings from your tools. You don't want it to just be a massive splinter flying somewhere. And even if you're wearing safety goggles, there's no guarantee it won't get underneath the goggles somehow. So that's what I'm going to do next. I'm going to make this into an octagon. Okay, so now we have something that at least doesn't have any sharp corners on anymore. And that's where we're going to start. So here it is basically set up. I have it on the bench and it is clamped. And for this tool, clamping is good enough. You can also screw it down, obviously, but I just clamp it to the bench and I find that that's strong enough to keep it from moving around. And it is set up with two pulleys, or one. So this part is, of course, part of the motor. And you see it has different radius of spindles here. It's one spindle with different radiuses. And on this side, I have a similar setup. And depending on the size of the spindle that you're using, you can make this move faster or slower. So I have this set up currently to go as fast as I need on this. It's pretty quick. I'm not even sure if I could, the way I have it currently, if I could make it go any faster, because I need to move the motor over a little bit, which I could do. It's just screws. And of course, so this tension is made by the weight of the engine itself, or the motor itself. So that's convenient. You don't have to ever worry about getting that tension just right. It just sits under gravity. So yeah, I could make it go faster if I move this whole thing over and then attach these larger to the smaller side here. But this is actually as fast as I need to go. So if you want to see, it's pretty quick. Quick enough for me anyway. So now that it's all set up, I can fit this piece in there. Now I have, on that side I have that the point and a point, and on this side I also have cut 9-degree slices. So that should fit in there. On the other end, we have another point. So I'll just poke it into that point first because it's on a spring. And then that point goes in there. And I have to say that on this end, it can all be adjusted with an Allen wrench. Okay. Well, let's put on I have my goggles here. So the goggles are going on. Let's give it a test run to see what happens. All right. That seems to turn all right. I don't really like how not secure it feels under my fingers though. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my little mallet. I'm going to encourage it a little bit. So make sure it's all lined up the way it's supposed to be. There we are. Okay, so the first step is to round off the whole thing. And to do that, I need a tool. So which tool? Let's see here. Let's take a look at the tools. So there I have my tools. There it is. So I'm going to start off with something like this. It's just going to help me get it around, basically. Mm-hmm. I know that seems rather underwhelming. I'm just still setting up how everything is going to work together here. So you hear that it's quite not chippy, but it's not, since it's only hitting the corners, and the corners are, even if they're not sharp corners, they're still corners. So you can hear that it's bouncing off of each one. So we have some work to do here. Well, we're getting somewhere. This is a bit of a slog, so I'm going to turn you off, and I'll bring you back when it is round. So I don't know if you can see this, but I've marked a pencil line there and there. Yes, this end is going to be the shaft that goes into the cello, and this is going to be the knob on the outside of the cello that will hold the the tail gut. So as you can see, as we're getting lower down in there, everything really heats up. So you can't just go in, you gotta take your time. So now I hope the shape is becoming more clear. We have the shaft that goes into the cello. That's actually going to be cut off about there. Then we have this little ring that goes up against the cello. Then we have the bulbous section, and then nothing. So actually making these end buttons is not so different from making pegs. It's just really a big peg. Okay, so that's the basic shape that I like. I don't like it when they're too long. I think that looks silly. In this case, I think I might have made this a little too thick, so I might reduce that, which is fine because that just means, more shaft, and I can reduce the shaft if I need to. But if I didn't have that much and I wanted more, you can't add anything back. So now I'm going to take a little bit off the end there, and I'm going to measure it out to something. Again, this is all by eye because there are no real rules to proportion here. So what do I have there? I like the look of that. And that is 15, 16-ish, and that is 5. So that's 1 to 3. So why don't we make that? Okay, so that's 2. Which is nice in proportion. No, 2 would be there. So I'm just going to take a little bit off. So we have a proportion of 1 to 2 to 3, which that's kind of nice. So now we have the option of doing a little ornamentation or not. I think I am going to do a little ornamentation. How about we can do some lines there. So as you can see, there's still some work left to be done. I need to round that off a little bit better, but I'm going to do that by hand. I don't have the kind of chuck that will just hold it so I can finish that. This is simply under, as you can see, it's just under tension. So I'm going to cut that. I'm going to cut it off there, and then I'll fit it to the cello. I might do a little bit more, well, let's face it, I'm going to do quite a bit more sanding before it's all done, but that's basically it. Thanks for watching. See you next time.